Is it? Yep, good to go. Good afternoon. Today we're marking up 10 bills, 7 of which I will be asking unanimous consent to consider en bloc. All of these bills were previously discussed during one of the subcommittee's legislative hearings this Congress. I'm supportive of the bills on today's agenda, which are intended to improve the lives of our nation's veterans and their families. In accordance with committee rules, the subcommittee has contacted the Congressional Budget Office seeking informal preliminary cost estimates for each of the bills being considered this afternoon. Many of these preliminary scores are only a range of potential costs because the subcommittee has still not received official cost estimates on the bills from the Congressional Budget Office. None of the bills today include the offsets that will be necessary to move the bills forward. However, as we discuss what bills will go to the full committee markup and then the floor, we will add offsets to ensure that we are in accordance with House rules, that we are protecting the American taxpayer. I look forward to working with the ranking member and other members of the subcommittee to find offsets that have the least impact on our veterans. Of note, there are still multiple opportunities to improve and make necessary changes to these bills. The ranking member and I will continue working with our colleagues on the committee and any stakeholders that have feedback on these bills as we continue to work through the legislative process. I now recognize the distinguished ranking member for any opening remarks he may have.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairwoman Kiggins, for organizing today's markup. I will aim to keep my comments brief so that we can quickly proceed to the considering 10 bills on today's agenda. Among the legislation that will be considered in block is my bill, H.R. 4225, the VA Acquisition Review Board Act. I appreciate that it has been included in today's markup. My legislation would create a department-wide acquisition review board and establish a process for approving and overseeing VA's most costly and high-risk contracts. This legislation will ensure there are better checks and balances on the cost, schedule, and scope of all VA contracts with estimated life cycle costs of $250 million or more. This is a long overdue solution to an issue that VA has had for decades in terms of its inability to successfully execute and deliver on major acquisitions. VA supports this bill, and I am hoping that my colleagues will as well. With that, Chairman Kiggins, I will yield back my time.
Thank you, Ranking Member Mervan. I now call up H.R. 3504. The clerk shall report the bill.
H.R. 3504, to direct the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to submit to
The
each
text was circulated in advance, so pursuant to committee rules, without objection, the first reading is dispensed with, and the bill is now open for amendment at any point. And I have an amendment in the nature of a substitute at the desk. The clerk shall report the amendment.
amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3504. Strike
I ask
all.
for unanimous consent that further reading of the amendment in the nature of a substitute be dispensed with and that it be considered base text for purposes of the markup. Hearing no objection, so ordered. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes to speak in support of my amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3504. This needed legislation would require VA to survey each of their facilities on the status of their police force and report that data to Congress. Unfortunately, violent crime has been on the rise at VA medical centers. In fiscal year 2018, 3,141 violent crimes were committed. By fiscal year 2021, that number more than doubled to 6,505. At last week's legislative hearings, I learned that VA does not have a formal process of collecting self-reported data from VA local police units and relies on reviews every 3 years to keep tabs on what is happening on the ground. The situation is clearly serious, and in this rapidly changing world, Congress needs a better and more up-to-date picture of the challenges that VA police face. Once VA is properly collecting and sharing data, we will be able to determine if further congressional action is needed. My amendment expands the reporting to all VA facilities where VA police have jurisdiction. I'd like to thank the American Federation of Government Employees and Representative Pappas' team for working with my team on this amendment. I encourage all members to support this amendment in the nature of a substitute, and I yield back the balance of my time. Do any other members wish to comment on the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3504? No other amendments were filed. Are there any further amendments? Hearing none, the question now occurs on my amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3504. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. I now recognize Mr. Mervan for a motion.
I'm so sorry, Madam Chairwoman. I move that H.R. 3504 as amended be reported favorably to the full committee.
There's a motion to favorably forward H.R. 3504 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and H.R. 3504 as amended is favorably forwarded to the full committee. I now call up H.R. 2499. The clerk shall report the bill.
H.R. 2499, to authorize the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to carry out an information technology system and prioritize certain requirements to manage
Text
supply.
was circulated in advance, so pursuant to committee rules. Without objection, the first reading is dispensed with, and the bill is now open for amendment at any point. And I have an amendment in the nature of a substitute at the desk. The clerk shall report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 2499.
I
Strike
ask unanimous consent that further reading of the amendment in the nature of a substitute be dispensed with, and that it be considered base text for purposes of the markup. Hearing no objection, so ordered. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes to speak in support of the amendment to H.R. 2499. VA's major modernization efforts over the past decade have been plagued by failures. This is why Congress has to exercise active oversight of each major program, including the supply chain modernization that VA is starting now. That means authorizing the program or encouraging the department to adjust its strategy. The supply chain modernization that VA has outlined is even more ambitious and risky than similar attempts that have failed in the past. It is simply moving in the wrong direction. The VA must change course or risk billions of dollars on yet another failed major modernization effort. My amendment would focus the VA on most crucial needs, a modern inventory management system for the Veteran Health Administration. This was badly needed during the COVID pandemic emergency, and it's still needed today. My amendment would authorize $50 million for this purpose and require completion within 3 years. Everything else should be put aside until this crucial need is met. I encourage all members to support this amendment in the nature of a substitute, and I yield back the balance of my time. Do any other members wish to comment on the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 2499? No other amendments were filed. Are there any further amendments? Hearing none, the question now occurs on my amendment in the nature of a substitute to 2499. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. I now recognize Mr. Mervan for a motion.
Madam Chairwoman, I move that H.R. 2499 as amended be reported favorably to the full committee.
There is a motion to favorably forward H.R. 2499 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and H.R. 2499 as amended is favorably forwarded to the full committee. I now call up H.R. 4278. The clerk shall report the bill.
H.R. 4278, to amend Title 38 United States Code to
The text
modify.
was circulated in advance, so pursuant to committee rules, without objection, the first reading is dispensed with, and the bill is now open for amendment at any point. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes to speak in support of H.R. 4278. In 2017, Congress made a powerful statement when it passed the VA Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act. Congress was united on the 2017 Accountability Act because veterans and the American people were fed up with bad VA employees not being held accountable. The 2017 Accountability Act led to a 50% increase in removal actions, which in part led to the veterans' VA-wide trust scores increasing from 59% in 2016 to 80% in 2020. Due to administrative court decisions, we are right back where we were 6 years ago. I'm concerned that the quality of care and benefits will similarly slide to the quality deserving of a failing score in 2016. We cannot afford to backslide and wait for the same tragedies that occurred at the Phoenix and Loma Linda VA hospitals. Congress must act now. I'll admit that accountability alone will not make VA the world-class organization the veterans deserve, but together with excellent leadership and efficient hiring practices, true accountability can make the VA a place veterans will be proud of. Do any other members wish to be recognized for H.R. 4278?
Madam Chairwoman.
Mr. Mervan, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Chairwoman, as you are aware of our legislative hearing last week, H.R. 2499 is not supported by VA, and the bill has raised a number of concerns among outside experts who feel that this bill will only add to the number of court challenges we have seen since VA has attempted to implement the 2017 law. Like all of my colleagues on this committee, I support accountability at the VA, but I cannot support this bill as written. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Moran. No amendments were filed. Are there any amendments? Hearing none, the question now occurs on the passage of H.R. 4278. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. I now recognize Ms. Radewagen for a motion.
I move that we report H.R. 4278 favorably to the full committee.
There's a motion to favorably forward H.R. 4278 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. H.R. 4278 is favorably forwarded to the full committee. I now ask unanimous consent to consider the following bills en bloc: H.R. 196, H.R. 4461, H.R. 1659, H.R. 608, H.R. 592, H.R. 4255, and H.R. 2733. Hearing no objections, so ordered. The clerk shall report the bills.
H.R. 196, to direct the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to modify
The bills were circulated in advance pursuant to committee rules. So I ask that the reading of the bills be dispensed with and the bills be open to amendment at any point. Without objection, so ordered. Does any member wish to speak on any of the remaining bills on the agenda?
Madam Chair, if I could make some quick remarks on my bills, please.
Chair recognizes Mr. Rosendale for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair, for holding this markup. My legislation, H.R. 196, the Expediting Temporary Ratings for Veterans Act, would directly help some of the sickest veterans who depend most on the VA disability compensation benefits. When a veteran is hospitalized for at least 21 days for a service-connected condition or illness, current law grants them a temporary increase in their disability rating to 100%. The problem is those rating increases may not be granted before the veteran leaves the hospital, or granted in the right amount, or granted at all. When a VA makes a mistake and overpays the veteran, that overpayment is sometimes collected as a debt. That's unacceptable, and the VA should not be hassling ailing veterans for the VA's own error. The VA has been conducting a limited pilot program to automate these temporary total disability claims for certain veterans with cancer. My legislation would expand this successful pilot in 1 year to speed up all claims processing for veterans hospitalized with all illnesses or conditions. Speed is critical, and the existing manual process tends to lag. It's also a relatively simple eligibility criteria that a computer is capable of handling. With that, I would like to also recommend passage, and thank you for including in the en bloc of H.R. 608, the EHRM Termination Act. The EHR Termination Act is the Oracle Cerner Electronic Health Record System, and it's operating right now at 5 of the 171 VA medical centers. Veterans at these 5 medical centers have complained about lost medication in the mail, receiving other veterans' medications, delayed specialist appointments and diagnostic tests, confusion with the patient portal, generally increased wait times, and widespread errors in their personal information. That, by anybody's definition, is an unmitigated disaster. I introduced the EHRM Termination Act to put a stop to this madness before the VA harms more veterans and wastes billions of dollars more. My legislation would abolish the Electronic Health Record Modernization Integration Office and transfer any functions to the Veterans Health Administration or the Office of Information and Technology at the VA. It would also revert all 5 medical centers using the Oracle Cerner EHR system back to Vista and CPRS. Moreover, it would prevent the VA from exercising any options on Oracle Cerner's contract, causing it to expire within 1 year. The job of the VA should be providing veterans the world-class benefits and services that they have earned, not doling out billions of dollar contracts to Silicon Valley companies. It is time to put our nation's veterans first by terminating the Oracle Cerner Electronic Health Record System. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I yield back.
Does any other member have comments? No amendments were filed to these bills. Does any member wish to offer an amendment? Hearing none, the question now occurs on passage of the bills included in the en bloc. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. I now recognize Mr. Mervan for a motion.
Madam Chairwoman, I move that H.R. 196, HR 4461, HR 1659, and HR 608, HR 592, and HR 4255, and HR 2733 be reported favorably to the full committee.
There's a motion to favorably forward the bills included in the en bloc. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bills are favorably forwarded to the full committee. I ask unanimous consent that the committee staff be authorized to make technical, clerical, and conforming changes to the bills favorably forwarded today. Hearing no objection, so ordered. I thank the members for their attendance today, and the subcommittee is now adjourned.
Well done, man.
That wasn't bad. Thank you. I'm paying attention. Thank you. You get to keep this? It's a little bit like I'm now getting a little spoiled.